the end of the day, like the idea of productivity that we have right now typically is pretty flawed. It's like, how many hours are you sitting in a chair? How often are you showing up? How many things do you output? And like we all know at this point, that is not real productivity or effectiveness. I could make 1 million at this point, thanks to AI, 1 million pages of content. And does that mean I'm being productive and effective? Like, probably not, because they're probably garbage. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks
So,
for joining in here, Jane. Do you want to start us off?
sure, I can kick us off.
Yeah.
So, some folks may have joined us last week on Friday, where we sort of started talking about this topic of doing less to do more. I think that, ultimately both of us are just really interested in conversations that are a little bit about helping people focus better, doing the work that has the most impact and provides the most value, and maybe a little bit of like simplification as well, right? Just like simplifying life, simplifying business. I think there's a lot of things that we overcomplicate. So last week when we spoke, we shared some of the research, some of the reasons that it's important to us to talk about this topic and why it's particularly relevant to us. And this week, there's sort of two things we were going to get into. First, we wanted to talk about a book that you've been exploring, Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece was we each were going to share just a couple of ways that we're exploring this idea of doing less in order to do more and sort of finding focus in our business or in our lives. So why don't we start with the book side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing to say too when we get this kicked off is doing less to do more is not like a quick thing to figure out. Like, it's not just a thing that like you say you're going to do it and then the next day you're doing it. I think it's really a journey. So when we're talking about these things, that's why I wanted to share the experiments we're running. And we're saying experiments, not concrete, absolute things that we have now implemented, because we're still testing and adjusting. So if you're listening to this later and you're like, oh, I have to do less to do more, it's a journey. Test first, do small steps. You don't need to do it all at once. And we're still learning too, which is half the reason we want to do this, is we want to share we are learning while we are trying to figure out how to apply this more in our own businesses.
Yeah. And that also to say that if you're watching this and you have something that you've implemented that
Yes.
sort of is working for you, like throw it in the comments or, get in touch with either Jordan or I to share a bit more. We'd love to share more examples from other folks along the way too.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more, the merrier, in my opinion. Because there's not one idea doesn't work for everybody. There's always you need the variety of ideas to find the right fit for you and where you're at and the time and all that good stuff.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So I'm in this mode right now where I don't do a lot of news at all because it's a little bit scary out there, if I'm being honest. But I let the big stuff kind of bubble up to me, and that's how I keep track of things. So I was in YouTube one day doing some research for something we're doing with one of our clients, and this video suggestion popped up from Cal Newport's new book, Slow Productivity. And I'm like, well, that's meant to be. I didn't even know he had a new book. It's a few months old, so this isn't even hot new topic, but timely. So I took a look at it. Watched the video, did some reading, looked through some content I have, and just shortening books, because I wanted to get a sense of what it was all about. And I still will probably read the whole book at one point, but I think the concept at a high level and the summary is really a great starting point. So I'm not trying to cut Cal Newport sales. Sorry, Cal Newport. I'm sure the book is amazing, but the concepts that are really the high level, I think, are just important enough that are worth talking about. And so he boils it down to kind of three main points. It's one is somewhat obvious, just do less. So take what's on your list and just find the ways to chop things off of it, which I know find the ways is kind of just smoothing over the hard part. But that concept I think is important of how can you take away the things from the list that really aren't going to move the needle? And we'll dive into that with the experiments we're running and things like that. Because really at the end of the day, the idea of productivity that we have right now typically is pretty flawed. It's how many hours are you sitting in a chair? How often are you showing up? How many things do you output? And we all know at this point, that is not real productivity or effectiveness. I could make 1 million at this point, thanks to AI, 1 million pages of content. And does that mean I'm being productive and effective? Probably not, because they're probably garbage. And so his idea is really how do we reframe productivity to moving the needle, being effective with what we do, so the things that end up in our list are actually worth doing. He talks a lot about doubling the time estimates for things. He still loves the idea of giving things a time wrapper. And we did this a lot in development too. When you'd estimate a project, you typically just double the estimate because we are really bad at looking into the future and thinking of what could happen. And so you just kind of got, no matter how good you get at it, give yourself the grace to spend more time doing it and be realistic with like, can the business afford for that long to be taken to do it? And if not, what else needs to get cleared out of the way to give more hours in each day to still double the estimate without doubling the days? I thought that was a really cool idea. Like there's still like, it's not the idea of like being less, wanting to get less far or to see less success. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
Doing less is not outcomes are less. It's the amount of effort that goes into the whirlwind is less. So you can get the outcomes more often.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is that like old saying of less is more.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those few things. One of the examples he gives, so I read the summary of the book through Blinkist, which I do love. And one of the examples in here that they give is in Italy in Rome, at the big steps there, at the bottom of the Spanish steps, there was a community McDonald's put in. And there was a group of people who were like, this is not the culture that we have here.
Yes.
We don't eat fast food, we eat slow food. And so they made some campaigns around like really enjoying the process of food, of making it, of imbuing it with like the best tastes and aromas and spending the time with the people you love the most to have these meals. And it wasn't that they were trying to cancel McDonald's. The McDonald's still went in, it was still there, still an option for people, but they wanted to just bring it to the forefront that like fast is not the only way to consume. Slow has a lot of benefits that you just can't get with fast. And so before we just go all in on McDonald's everywhere or fast food everywhere, let's take a moment to really think of all the benefits we get by slowing down with our food. And so you can take that principle and apply it to a lot of what you do in your day-to-day work as well. Like if you think of a McDonald's meal, and again, I'm knocking on so many companies. I don't hate McDonald's, but like everyone's got to admit, McDonald's is not a high quality meal that you're going to sit down and enjoy with your loved ones, right? It's a convenience meal. You do it when you're in a rush and you need everyone to have some food in them before they get grumpy. It serves a purpose. But you've got to admit, when you sit down for like that family made, slowly prepared meal that you really enjoy your company while you eat it, there is nothing better than that, regardless of what kind of meal it is. And if you take that metaphor and bring it through to your work, like, the fast food convenience projects you've done that turn out done, serviceable, but not even at 80%, right? They're like the 50, 60%ers that are like, yeah, they're done. They checked the box, but like barely, versus the ones where you got up in the morning excited about that thing and you crushed it and it was so valuable. Your clients loved it. Like, the difference already. We don't have to tell you what those differences are. He's just advocating a lot more for like, find more of those projects and pieces of work that like, when you do them, it's not a question of needing to measure them. It's not, you don't need to do all these analytics to figure out, like, you just know that you did quality work and you made quality impact. And you can just tell by being a human being that it was an effective piece of work.
Yeah. And probably a little bit more, like something that feels more meaningful and sort of fueling for you than, we all know those times where we've done that work where we're like, okay, it was good enough. And, maybe the person I was delivering it to, like, it still met their expectations, but it didn't meet my own expectations of what that looks like. And how you feel about delivering that versus how you feel about delivering something where you're like, yep, I left it all out on the table. Like that, again, brings a lot of momentum and a lot of energy to your work.
Yeah. There was not too long ago, I will share this shameful story where we were in such a rush for a weekend with the kids and activities and stuff like that we end up eating McDonald's or something like it like 3 times in one weekend.
Yeah.
And like you're talking about how do you feel after you produce a good piece of work versus a mediocre one? Yes. It's the same way you feel when you eat McDonald's 3 times on a weekend. You feel like garbage.
You feel awful.
So when you're shipping work like that often, the satisfaction of taking your pencil pen and checking the box off gives you that temporary, you're eating the greasy burger, the French fries that are crispy, you love it, you feel good. But after you're done and you look back at that check mark, you're like, that wasn't a real check mark. Like that was a pity check mark. It served the need, but like, I don't feel good about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It long term doesn't really work. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next piece that he talks about, this is my favorite part of the whole summary and the concept he has, is intermittent deep work. Of lots of people try to attack a problem in its entirety in one sitting. So
Yes.
I have my to-do list. I'm going to do these 3 things today, and they're going to be 100% done by the end of the day. And so he argues for on the big, important, slow-cooked meals where you're going to spend the time and put in the effort, you can't rush slow. So again, it makes sense on a common sense level, right? Like obviously, but in practice, much harder to do. So he gives a few examples of people who would take a book they were going to write or a project they were going to do or something of meaning. And instead of trying to jam it into this month or these next 3 months or whatever the time scale was, it's like, what would it look like if I spent a year doing it? And intermittently did like 2-hour blocks, 4-hour blocks of like smaller, very intense, more focused work. But then I let myself process in the background throughout a longer period of time to generate iteratively, increasingly better results, right? Of it, the more you let it like cycle and your team cycle without the pressure of like, you're not blowing deadlines. The deadline is 6 months instead of 3 next. We've doubled it. You now have the time to do a bit of work, let it register. And you need some systems to make sure people don't, procrastinate. I think it's Parkinson's law or forget which one it is. Like work will fill the space that it's given.
Yeah.
So you do need to make some intentional effort to make sure the work is happening intermittently. But he argues like better outcomes come. He gives some good examples like Jane Austen with her books and how she would write intermittently while they were like moving a lot through their childhood, but never got the time to sit down and write a book. But then when she did get a time in the countryside to sit down and write books, she had all this collective quality work that she had developed that making the book at the end was actually very easy because she had done a lot of the hard work before.
Yeah. Fun fact, it's Jane Austen's 250th birthday this year. I'm named after Jane Austen, so I love that you just brought that up. My family and I, all the women in my family, we just did a Jane Austen trivia day like a week and a half ago to celebrate her birthday.
So you knew all this then?
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, what's interesting to me is when you talk about this idea of we expect to sort of tie something up in a bow and finish it all in one go. Yeah. You know, a lot of the work I do is with leaders and leadership development. And I see that with performance issues with employees sometimes. A leader's like, okay, I'm psyching myself up to have this tough conversation with this employee, but then when we have it, it's all going to be solved. And it's like, that's not really how it works, right? It's like, we're going to start a conversation to figure out what's going on and how we can support this person with whatever that performance issue is. But this is like an ongoing thing that's going to require follow through. We're not going to tie it in a bow all in one 5-minute conversation. You know, a lot of these things we're looking at, you know, what would it look like for it to be a 3-month process to get this person where they need to be? And there's so much frustration that comes along with this expectation that, okay, I just got to have this one hard conversation and then the person's going to be able to do it. And then this disappointment when the person doesn't perform. You know, how would that change people's perspective if we approached it like we have to take it slow with performance issues too, that we have to give ourselves 3 months to really make this meaningful shift. So it sort of relates there as well.
Absolutely. And especially when you're dealing with people, right? Like we can change a thing on the computer pretty quickly. It's a setting. We toggle the switch and it's switched. Sometimes it is also takes long on the computer, but especially when you're dealing with people, behavior's hard. Like think about it. If a person has gone 5-10 years professionally, plus who knows how many years personally, like developing that behavior, the way they react to a situation, and you've now all of a sudden told them in this setting, that won't work. Think 10 years of a behavior. Think of any behavior you've done for 10 years. If someone told you you can't do it like that anymore, it'd be hard for you to like wake up the next morning and be like, cool, I'm not going to do it anymore. It doesn't work. You need to slowly build those baby steps, let them like build the confidence that, okay, this new way is, yes, a bit scary, but if I do this a little bit this first week, that's not so bad. And then once I've done the first week, like I'll have the confidence and the evidence that I can change. Okay, so now week 2, a little easier. I can go a bit further outside my comfort zone, week 3, week 4, and all of a sudden 3 months later, you have a person who's actually made a meaningful change in their behavior instead of a person who's been frustrated, banging their head against the wall, trying to be someone they're not day one.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, and it's looking at it like it's a long-term relationship building process and like a trust building process that we're going through. And that takes time. I've, heard that saying a few times of you can only go at the speed of trust. And so when it's
Yes.
anything to do with people and
Oh,
relationships,
that's a good one.
like you can only go at the speed of trust. You can't force trust immediately and then just be able to make change and do all these things. You have to go at the speed of somebody trusting your motives, trusting that you have their back when we're dealing with any sort of challenges at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring that up, speed of trust, because I talk about this a lot with clients. Of a lot of clients come because they not enough leads, sales aren't good enough. We can't keep customers once we have them, and oftentimes the solution they've decided to pursue is something around like cold calling or just reaching out to more people or something. And so I brought up this trust triangle concept many times with them of when you are connecting with a person, you have to assess where your trust is starting. And if you don't know the person at all, you're actually starting in the negative, because unfortunately the world we live in is a world where there are multiple scams. There are people who are trying to take your money and not deliver service that look polished and good, because now it's easy to look so polished and good that to actually decide if someone is trustworthy is a very hard thing to do now. And so when you can build like any kind of trust triangle where you have a third party, I say like something that establishes some mutual level of trust between person A and person B, like a partner that can refer work. So, hey person who's having organizational challenges, I've actually worked with Jane before and she's amazing. You're going to love her. Okay, person B now all of a sudden, if they trust this third party, is going to say, cool, like if you liked Jane and you worked with her, I probably won't hate her. Like she probably won't try to steal my money. So now I'm at least starting at even, right? Like maybe it's not even positive. Maybe it's just zero. But that's neutral. Already so much easier to do than starting from negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a lot of times that's the conversation is before we go just like get new strangers, who do we know in your circles that can help us solve whatever the problem really is? If it's lack of sales, maybe it's just like people don't believe you enough to give you their money. Well, how can we help them believe you more before they have to give you your money? Or who in your network already knows people that are your ideal clients? Instead of trying to find them in the wild wilderness of the internet, you know this person and they know people you want to know. So if you're good at what you do, that should be an easy enough conversation.
And a perfect example of doing less to do more. Like instead of going after the relationships where there's no trust and you have to do so much work to build that neutral level that you can even start from, it's a great example of saying like, well, how can I look at getting new business in a way that involves referrals and partners and people who already have that trusting relationship so that some of the work is done sort of for me before I get into this next stage.
Exactly. Yeah. Because building trust yourself, like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with cold calling. There is a little bit, but like it can be an effective method if used properly, but it requires a system and it requires a lot more touch points and a lot more like connection and building and evidence that you've built up over likely years to convince someone that you're not a fraud.
Absolutely.
It's just anyway. So you saying goes to me as trust just got me like, that's such a big thing we talk about so often is doesn't matter if you're dealing with like people leadership, clients, prospects, employees. Like I think the people element, wherever the people can connect and that trust can be built is where that's where you're gonna get speed from and totally goes to like that is what's worth investing in. Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there anything else from this book that you wanted to highlight from your research?
There is one more, and it actually kind of ties in here a little bit. We had a comment from Mark St. Goddard in the chat here too. He was saying they call it snacking when they work on like a little bits of things, or they kind of like let themselves wander a little bit between working on the big hard thing to kind of like take a break, right? You get your little snack from upstairs that you like, you eat that, but then you go back and you eat the real food afterwards, or you do the hard work.
Go and like work on the meal.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. The last piece in the book was, he talks a lot about like obsessing over quality. And this is one I actually struggled with a little bit because on one hand, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely for, like we just talked about, that really good home cooked meal. But I think when people hear obsess over quality, which is the first line in this sentence of the book, I worry that they hear 100%, right? Obsess over quality, like obsess is a pretty strong word.
But it has to be perfect, sort of.
Exactly. And I think that's actually a problem, is that quality isn't perfection. I would say obsess over quality is like that 80% mark where it's like really, really good. and you got them exactly what they needed, but maybe like all the polish isn't there. Maybe like all the finesse isn't there. And like there are times where you want the 90, the 95, the 99. Absolutely. But I think obsessing over quality, as long as you have the asterisks or the context of like obsess over quality does not equal 100% all the time, then I would agree. Because if I think of, he gives a couple examples of like quality work. I don't even think we need to talk about that. That's like a, yes, the more quality work you can provide, the better you will do. That's a pretty well established norm at this point. But he actually goes so far as to bring in like, and this is the part that I actually really agreed with, is when you're starting to try to do something better or for the first time or establish yourself as someone who can do quality in a space, he talks a bit about like investing in quality to produce quality. So an example he gave was like when if you are serious, so he was going to school, he was going to take his, I forget, his master's in computer science, I think it was. And one of the first things he did was he bought like a high quality lab notebook so that when he wrote about the thing that he wanted to become great at, he was writing in something that he could like feel the quality. And it was like, it was outside his budget. It was a little bit of a stretch. It was like $50, but you know, he's a college kid and everything was expensive. So the $5 notebook would have been fine, but he got the $50 like high quality lab notebook with a thick paper. And he said, whenever he opened it up, it was a reminder to take this thing seriously and produce quality because he invested in it. And I loved that, because I've done it before too, of like, I've bought like nice fountain pens because when I take notes with clients, I want to be great at understanding how to help clients. And it's a reminder to I write something that they say down that it was important. And it's my job to figure out how to help them come up with a quality solution. And it's things like that, like building quality in like almost full stack in the area you care most about was a very interesting takeaway of not just the output, but like how do you stack your success with quality as well so that you can produce quality more often, more easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And this might be bleeding into a little bit of what we sort of want to continue the conversation on, which is, you know, what are the ways that we're putting this into practice in our business? How are we doing less so that we can do more, or how are we simplifying a little bit? And it had me thinking about just this morning, I was at an event for speakers, the Canadian Association for Professional Speakers, CAPS. And we had somebody at Twist who was there who was showing us how to build incredible slides in Canva. And she's so good at what she does. Her team is so good at what they do. And I was sitting there thinking, you know, my goal in life is not to be a specialist in Canva. I'm good at building presentations, but like that's not my specialty. My specialty is the message and speaking and bringing my like stories and energy to these talks. And when it comes to, but I want to have great quality slides. But the doing less to do more version of that is recognizing that I don't have the 100 hours I need to spend on building this 30 or 60 slide deck that becomes a template for me on speaking. And Twist and her team, that is their specialty. They can do it in half the time that I'll be able to do it. And that I'm investing in that quality. If I, you know, at some point engage them to build those slides. And we were talking just before this call got started, Jordan, and I was saying like, you know, I could play with those 100 hours now and I would get something. I'd get something good. She gave some great training on Canva and I would get something that's decent together. It still would be nowhere near the quality of what she and her team can do. And I'll end up paying her and her team to do it 6 months, 9 months, a year from now, regardless. So I'm kind of like, okay, should I just do that now? Like, why put my time into that thing that I don't really intend on becoming an expert in anyway? Particularly if I can find the budget for it, which is like maybe the next question I need to look at. But, you know, maybe there's a timing question there, but, you know, it's an example of saying, you know, that's not my specialty. I don't need to make it my specialty. There's somebody who does that. I'm going to outsource.
100%. And even if you find someone to do like a version 1 of it, right? Maybe maybe like their version is not budget today. Maybe you have a conversation with them, see if there's options, but like explore the options, right? Like most people, I think, default to, I wish I could get someone to do it. And I know who I would get, but I can't. So instead, they just treat it as an either or. Instead, I'll do it. And to me, like we talked about this last episode, and I talk about this all the time of my theory on business or hypothesis on business is like the more, especially when it's like solo business owner, the more that person can focus their efforts on the 80% that they do better than anybody, that they want to become great at and that they enjoy doing, the business will thrive. Because what happens is when most people tackle business, they try to create a watered down version of themselves that is good enough at everything, even after they start having money coming in. Because at the start, yes, you have to do everything. You only have time. You have no money. Cool. Or you have some saved up. You can kill those really, really brutal things off your list. But the more you can put yourself to like the message, the thought leadership, the actual helping people achieve their goals, your time is worth so much more doing that. So you can make more money doing that than you'll ever make creating your own Canvas slides. So every dollar you can
100%.
spend to get someone else to do them for you frees up more hours for you to improve your thought leadership, for you to take on another client, for you to make more LinkedIn posts to get more leads, like whatever it is that is the next thing you need to do that's more in your zone of genius. That's how you scale the business. And I think people get stuck in like, I need to own and control all the things for as long as possible to make sure that they're done. But then they just turn into this like very like flat average version of themselves, which doesn't help them succeed. It helps hold them back, honestly.
And it's such a delicate balance, like particularly for those small businesses, those solopreneurs,
Yes.
like, where do you spend your money? And
Absolutely.
like, what can you afford to do that frees you up? But like, what needs to be you at this stage? And that is a challenge. So, figuring out what you can outsource at what stage and what's going to be most meaningful to you at this stage. Like a good example for me is a lot of people, one of the first things they outsource is bookkeeping. And I'm like, I haven't actually found my bookkeeping to be that onerous. And,
Nice.
I've liked being able to get a handle on how my financials work in my business and sort of really paying close attention to that in this first year or two. I'm now getting to the stage where I might outsource it, but if I don't mind it, and I don't feel like it takes up much time, okay, maybe that can stay with me a little bit longer. But what are the things that I'm putting off, that I'm not doing, that are holding me back in my business?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things I want to outsource.
And that's one of my favorite exercises to do with people, is that like almost a list, a triaging list of like, what are just all like the big enough activities? We don't need to go like minutia of every single thing you've ever done, but what are like the big buckets of stuff? And then let's rank them with like, how good are you at doing them? How good do you want to get good at doing them? Like, is this a thing that you want to get better at? It might be just like, you might be really interested in bookkeeping, even though it's not supporting like the core of the business, but that might be something you're really interested in. Cool, do it. Like, just because you're not good at it now doesn't mean you shouldn't get good at it if you want to. But it's like, what are you good at? What do you want to be good at? And then what brings you joy in doing it? Because some people are great at doing something and it just drags them down. And so they think they need to keep it forever, when like, again, you're trying to optimize for these three things. And the more you can do the stuff at the top of that list and delegate the stuff closest to the bottom, that's when you really start getting leverage over your time.
For sure. And that also then, we talk about the outsourcing piece. I know when I think about what has been really effective for me over these last 2.5 years since starting my business, is also really thinking about the niching question, right? Like often when you start, so whether it's a small business or whether it's, a team that's a part of a bigger organization, there's often phases where you're like, okay, I need to be all things to all people, or, we need to provide value. So we're going to do all these things, or we're building our credibility in our relationships. So we're going to do all these things. But as you get into it, you really start to look at like, what is the value that we can provide here? And again, what are those things that are fueling for the team? And I know when I first started, I was like, okay, my background's HR. I've been doing the leadership development thing for a long time, but I also have a background in HR. So I was like, I'll do some HR consulting and HR support hours, and I'll do leadership training, but I'll also do some HR training, like retention training or all these other things. And it, it really only took me 6 months in to be like, yeah, I can do it, but this isn't a part of my business I really enjoy. And though I can do it, I also know there's people out there that are better at it than I am, that enjoy it more, are more tuned in to like the day-to-day of HR stuff than I am, based on the work I've been doing for the last while. And so it only took me really about 6 months to say like, okay, not taking on any new clients that are looking for that. I'll refer them elsewhere. Even when I look at the coaching side of my business, I typically have a couple one-on-one coaching relationships at a time. But I'm really determined my sweet spot is in the training and speaking space. And so, I continue to just move more and more of the work that I'm doing in those directions. And, at the beginning, the training, I had different topics, different areas I worked in. And now it's leadership training. And yes, there's like a few things within leadership training, but it's this leadership training bucket. And I'm no longer doing the HR training. I'm no longer doing the retention training, all of that kind of stuff. So that's again, another way in the business that I've been sort of experimenting how to do less to do more.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think the niching thing is such a funny piece of advice, because I both agree and disagree with it pretty passionately, where luckily I got really good advice a long time ago that pointed me in the right direction. And it's actually what you ended up doing, where when you start, unless you have some built up expertise that is very transferable to this thing you're doing now, you are much better off to get more specific about like who you want to help,
right,
and niche there instead of how you want to help them. Because
Gotcha.
it's a lot easier for you to find the people that you want to help and then ask them questions about like, how could I help you? And then do that. And then by doing those things, you'll get the reps and you'll figure out, I really like this. I don't really like this. But because you know these people so well now, not only can you find the thing that you love doing that helps them, because you've obsessively like understood them, you can find the relationships you need to build so that you can give them an answer every time they connect with you. So you become like their go-to person of like, yes, you can't provide that anymore because you don't do it anymore. But because you've done it and you know how helpful it was and you know what good looks like, you found 3 people you can recommend. So, hey, Jane, I need help with this. Great. That sounds like absolutely the thing you should be doing. Let me connect you with Candace. She'll be great to set you up with this. And then when you need the training, I'm right here to help you with that. And those pitches honestly create lifetime customers. When you tell them, I'm not right for you right now, this person is, who do you think they're coming back to when they have the problem you can solve? Are they going to go shopping?
Absolutely.
Like, no way. They just pick up the phone, call you. I don't know if they pick up the phone, send you an email, a TikTok. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do this too. Do you still do this? Because like my kids are like,
Absolutely.
what does this mean?
I'm not doing this. And then,
Oh, anyways, show my age. Absolutely. So I think that's nice that you've like gone through the reps to find what you really want to be doing, but it's for the audience that you care the most about, right? Like that, I don't think has really changed. And the same thing for us, where we're finding every day we get a little bit more information that helps us like narrow in on like, we started with entrepreneurs. I'm obsessed about helping entrepreneurs because I want to see more of them succeed, because I think we just need more out in the world. And to have that happen, they need more support, because doing it all by yourself is next to impossible. And I like to make the analogy of like going to the casino, right? Like you can go to the casino, make a bet and hit the jackpot. Anybody can do it. It doesn't require any special training. But to do that is very hard, because you're just like throwing a dart, putting a bet down, whatever. Whereas to be successful in something, the more support you have, the more training you have, like to play blackjack well. This is not the greatest metaphor, but like you can train to get better at some of those things. So you have a higher likelihood.
Odds.
Exactly. Yes. And so I think what's happening right now is entrepreneurship gets this, I don't know, badge of honor of like, if you did it all yourself, you were really successful. And I think it's just like, it's setting people up for failure, because to do it all yourself is a chance-based outcome. To do it with the support is a intentional, like setting yourself up for success version of doing it. And so that's all I knew. It was like, I want to be the person that helps them be more successful more often. And over time, through talking to them and helping them become more successful, I realized more and more the part that I really liked doing and the part that I didn't like doing, and then like how to position it to them for what problems they have to solve. But I've also developed an entire like collective network of people. So when I'm not the person, it's an easy refer for me. And I know they do good work, and I know they'll get along, and I know that they'll get what they need. And it just continually lets me like on my mission of helping them succeed more often. Now it doesn't always have to be me. It can just be like, you can come to me, I'll tell you what you need, and then make sure you get it so that when you do need our service, you know we're here and we have your best intentions in mind.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting when you talk about this idea too of like feeling like people need to do it on their own. I think that people that are very successful are not doing it on their own. They've figured that out at some point. But it also like plays into this idea of hustle culture, right? And of just like powering through, and the harder you work, the better the outcome's going to be. But we know that beyond a certain amount of hours a week, like people's productivity falls off the cliff, and we're not actually getting that much more done.
Mhm.
And you mentioned this earlier too, but this idea that like you are your business, so you have to take
Yes.
care of yourself, right? And you're the most important resource in your
Mhm.
business. And so like thinking about these ways that we can go slower or do less to do more,
Yeah.
also being like, how are we taking care of ourselves so that we don't burn out, so that what we're doing is sustainable?
Totally. I was going to bring that up as one of the experiments where, not experiments, it's just baked in from day one of I've burnt out before. So I know like all the science, I know my triggers, I know my, like the things that start happening in my life when it's getting close. So I've gotten pretty good at identifying it and like putting it out before it happens. But it looks a lot like bringing in a co-founder like Tara to the business early because
Yes.
I knew if I was on my own, I would not succeed. And having an outside mentor, I have a mentor as well, because even though I give advice on this all day, every day, you give yourself the worst advice. And I need someone who's outside of this whole thing to just give me the reality checks when I need them. And I need
Yeah.
the massage and chiropractor I went to this morning to make sure my body is feeling good. So I'm not like weighed down by sore shoulders or like a back that's keeping me up at night or whatever. Like
Yeah.
taking care of yourself is so underrated. And again, I think the entrepreneurship hustle culture that's been established tells everyone not to. Like it tells everyone like use that resource and burn it to the like carve it to the bone to get off the ground, and then later on you can enjoy your beach days. And like I think that's
Yeah.
frankly bullshit of like you won't get a later if you burn yourself out getting there. Like I've
You
seen
know,
it so many times to know that's fact, that's real truth.
and this is something that people are thinking and talking about. I was in a training session yesterday morning with
Mm-hmm.
a small group from a construction organization. And one of the guys jumped in at one point and said sort of that question of like, what are people doing right now? Are you working super hard and just like focusing on work so that you can retire early and like saving as much as you
Yeah.
can, retiring early and then enjoying life? Or are you trying to do both now and still travel and take vacation and enjoy things now, but you're prepared to work a little bit longer? And the question I also have, and again, I think entrepreneurship gives folks the opportunity for this a little bit more, is like, well, how can I do both? Like, what
Exactly.
does it look like to
Mm-hmm.
still, work hard and make money and save and be able to have more control over when you retire and when you slow down later, while
Yep.
also enjoying life now and doing, the things that you need to do to take care of yourself now.
Yep.
And I have, I have one example of a client. This is years ago, and it was sort of a government related client that I was working with. And a lot of the folks on this team, they had pensions, and they were all now 15, 17, 20 years in.
Yep.
And my sense was that, a lot of the people in those jobs, like the job wasn't bad, but if
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the pension, would they still be there? No. And,
No.
anything once you're kind of over it starts to feel heavy, right?
Yeah.
And you could tell that these folks, a lot of them were saying like, like I have 5 years, 2 months, 6 days left, and then
Mm-hmm.
I've got full pension, or, they were kind of counting down. But I could tell they were really shaken because a colleague of theirs had gotten their magic number to retire,
Yeah.
worked hard, but, again, this job that maybe wasn't this person's purpose or passion and didn't sort of light them up, but they got through, they got to their magic number, they retired. And then within 3 months, they had a heart attack and they passed
Mm-hmm.
away. And you could tell that this team was absolutely shaken, not only because, they lost this person that was very important to them, but a lot of them were looking like, hey, I've been unhappy now to
Mm-hmm.
get to that. And there's no
Mm-hmm.
guarantee when
There
I get
isn't.
to that.
Nope. That's
Yeah.
that's why like I know I'm biased and very passionate about entrepreneurship. And I tell people like there's nothing wrong with having a job. And I know I can come
For
off as like I think there is. I don't think there is. There is for me because I've decided
yes.
that like it's more important for me to have that control now that I can take 2 weeks off in the summer, that we can go. We went to Canmore last November out of the blue for my wife's birthday with the kids. And we took like 3 days that were not holidays. They weren't just because we could. And it was amazing. Because it was it was a good family building memories, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not even joking when I say like those little vacations and the ability to like do both now. I solved more problems on that vacation for my business than I had the last month before we went. And I
Yeah.
wasn't working on that vacation. My laptop didn't come with me. But the space to think and just sit in the hot tub with the kids or go for a walk in the mountains or whatever just gave me the space to let let things resolve themselves, because I also wasn't trying to shut off work because I hated it. I enjoy what I do. So I let it come
Yeah.
with me on this vacation in my brain. I didn't bring
Yeah.
the computer, didn't bring like the papers, but I let the things that mattered that I was actually interested in solving come with me on the vacation. And they got to be worked on in the background. And while I was walking with friends that we went with and my family and having random conversations, some connection would happen of like, that just wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the space to let
Yeah.
it just breathe. And if I hated my job, I would have turned it off when I left for that vacation and turned it back on when I got back. So I think there's something to be said for like a working, like being able to enjoy what you do enough to bring it with you and have it just be part of your life, not from an all-consuming point of view, but from a, I care about the stuff that I'm doing. I want to see it done better or see better results for my clients or whatever it is. And it's not because I feel like this weight of I have to. It's from a place of I want to. And this balance is what lets me do it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's that sort of like mind wandering idea, right?
Yes.
Of like letting yourself be bored, letting yourself like just be in the moment and sort of seeing what happens, and giving yourself that time. And even, again, from a leadership perspective, when I talk to leaders, one of the things I often talk about is this idea of making time to lead, and
Yes.
basically setting some time aside for yourself as a leader to be adaptive and to give yourself time to reflect and experiment on a regular basis. And really, again, that is about going slow to go fast, or doing less to
Totally.
do more. It's saying like, I'm going to take this time now so I can be intentional, I can be proactive, and I'm less likely to have more reactive things pop up later, performance issues or lack of communication or whatever it is, because I'm being a bit more proactive now.
Absolutely. The one last thing I wanted to add in for experiments we're working with right now, and it's really more for me, honestly. I know myself at this point. I am, if I move the camera over here, you can probably get like a sense from just like the blurred out stuff back here. I'm like a serial hobbyist. Like I play board games, I do painting stuff, I've learned how to do whittling and woodworking, like you name it, I've probably tried it at some point. I was a COVID espresso barista. We got an espresso machine. I know how to do all that now. Like you name it, I've probably gotten obsessed about it for at least some amount of time. And so for me, I know a real tendency of mine is like, when there's a problem to be solved, I want to try all the solutions. And I'm a really good problem solver. So like, I like to just like find all the creative angles we can get to like solve some problem that's keeping me up at night or a client up at night. But I also know that creates a lot of like whiplash. Tara doesn't work that way. So if I come up with like 5 new ideas, that seems like, whoa, we have a plan. We don't need 5 more ideas. Let's focus on getting the plan done. And I found like, I need that balance to be able to do both, because I need the creativity outlet of like, how could we solve this problem if we wanted to do it differently? Maybe there is a better version of what we're trying to do out there, but maybe it's all garbage and it's just worth throwing out. So what I've been experimenting with is, instead of letting myself just like always productively wander of how could we or what could we try, I've been starting to give myself an hour or 2 each day. It's kind of like eat the frog, like you said, but instead of first thing in the day, I really tried to take like an unstructured approach to this. I like systems and structure, and I really wanted to try to give myself a little bit of flexibility and grace with this. Of every day, instead, I try to find an hour or 2 block that I'll put in the calendar with one thing, not a list of things, like one thing that will actually move the needle wherever the bottleneck is in our business. So right now we were going through some of our old contacts lists and just letting them know we had this new offer. So I spent like 2 hours just reaching out to everybody to start and initiate some conversations to see like, was it to be something that was a good fit for them, someone they knew? Did they have any feedback for us? Just like really like, but 2 hours of just talking to people, because otherwise it would have been on my to-do list and it would have seemed like too much to do in other things. But for 2 hours, it was just like, okay, free reign, go through the emails, go through CRM, go through LinkedIn, go through Instagram, and just message people until the 2 hours is up. And that worked really well for me because it kept me focused on the plan that we had. But then once the 2 hours were up, then I could go do whatever I thought I needed to do in the moment and let myself wander. And if that was go upstairs and sit on the couch with the dogs for a bit, I'd go upstairs and sit on the couch with the dogs. And if it was try to brainstorm some solutions for a client, I could do that. But the big thing was done for today. And if nothing else happened, if that's all I did by doing less, it actually would move us further ahead than if I would have spent the whole day thrashing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had mentioned this to you in a previous conversation, but I have this weird thing with 42 minutes on my phone
Right.
timer.
Which I love.
And so if I have something that maybe I have something on my list that I know I need to work on, but it's the thing that keeps like falling to the bottom of the list. And it's also probably weighing on me. And I go, oh, this is the third day that I've bumped, that thing. And I'm getting caught up just like answering emails and all these things that feel urgent, but aren't actually important. And I'm not getting to the important thing. I do a thing where I put 42 minutes on my phone and I just say, all I have to do is focus on this thing for 42 minutes. And then I have total sort of permission after that to move on to something else or whatever. And I find, for one thing, I get way further in 42 minutes than you kind of imagine you can. Like 42 minutes doesn't feel very long. And so you think, what am I even going to get done? And by the end of 42 minutes, you're like, oh, I've actually made some pretty solid headway here. But I also often find that I have found myself in some momentum and I keep working on it after. But something about the pressure of saying like, all I got to do is 42 minutes just sort of makes it easier to attack whatever this thing is.
Yeah. I really like that because I think I've unconsciously done that with these hour blocks of, I don't set a goal for the hour block or the 2 hour block.
Yeah.
I just set an activity. So I know that doing this for hour, 2 hour, whatever, it will make good results because it's in line with the plan. Now,
going in the right direction.
It's not like message 40 people in 2 hours. It's just message people for 2 hours. So, you sit down and the first one's like a little, this is hard to do. But then once you get into the habit, like messaging people is pretty easy and it's just a conversation you're having. So once you get into it, the first 15 minutes are like a little slow and painful. But now that I've been messaging for a while, now it's easy. Now I'm like looking for like, who else haven't I talked to in a while? Like, let's talk with them. This will be fun.
Absolutely. And it's sort of like my goal at the 42 minutes is sort of Brene Brown's idea of the shitty first draft.
Yes.
Like,
I love
it's
that
just
idea so much.
it's the blank screen or the blank page that is so intimidating. And so to be able to say like, okay, it doesn't even have to be good. I'm just going to take 42 minutes and I'm going to like often I'm taking slides and I'm just pulling in from other presentations and putting in placeholders and like a word here and there. I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this there. I want to talk about this here. But you find, even if it's a mess, when you come back to it the next time, you're like, okay, but I have something to work with. And there's actually a bit more there than I thought there was. Like, there's a bit more to get
100%.
into it.
Yeah. I think I was telling you this example before, but I've legitimately, at one point, I was so frustrated with why I wouldn't write this stupid thing that needed to get written. I was like getting mad at myself. I'm like, it's not difficult to do. Like, you just need to write it. It's not even like a super complicated topic. Just sit down and write it. And I made myself sit down and write a short story about Sesame Street. So I'm like, it has nothing to do with what I want to do. It's going to be complete garbage. And like, it's not meant for anything, but it's going to make me just write words. And like, they'll be somewhat coherent. It won't be useful. But through that act is like, once your body figured out, like, this writing thing isn't so bad, the ideas about what you're actually supposed to be doing come, and they're like, well, now I want a way out. And like, why are we talking about Sesame Street? That's useless. And then like, the momentum kind of like pushes you through of, well, now let's use the activity that I'm doing to produce value instead of garbage. And it just flips. And I was telling you, like, it's so frustrating because like human beings are such stupid. Like we're so silly the way we work. Like, you need to trick yourself into doing something before you'll do it. But again, we could complain about how silly we are sometimes, or we could just realize like that's the way it works. And now we can optimize the system for like, cool, if I got to trick myself into writing, let's just trick myself into writing and then write for an hour.
And it's so true. Like, finding those tricks and the tricks that work for different people are different. But, we often have that feeling of like, well, I'll do it when I feel like it, or I'll do it when I have the motivation to do it. And that's not really how it works, right? Like,
no.
Starting the thing is what gives you the motivation and momentum. So taking that first step or finding those tricks that get you into the first step is so important.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm done. Hold on. I'm still here. Just my camera decided that it didn't feel like working anymore.
Well, I was thinking we're getting close to the end of our time here too. There you are.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I have to show this sweet shirt off that I'm wearing today. My daughter, I got clearance from her to wear my Goose and Poppy shirt with a blazer so that I could be fun and professional.
Are these your pets?
Yeah, these are our dogs.
Nice,
my wife got me a shirt for Christmas, and it's just like a sweet old school shirt that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. Yeah.
I love it. It's a little bit of Friday fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Another way to do less to do more. See how it works.
Exactly. So, appreciate the conversation about this, Jordan. I love how we're kind of like,
Absolutely.
oh, we'll maybe chat for like half an hour and then we get going on this stuff. And it's
I
really
know.
easy to fill basically an hour of time talking about this. I
Yeah,
think it's a fun topic to explore and something we're both so
absolutely.
interested in. But we have some plans for next week, I think, to
Hmm.
bring in a couple of guests. We're still working through the
Yes.
details on that.
Hmm. Yeah,
But we're looking forward to sharing that as soon as we can next week.
absolutely. We have a couple people we're starting to line up. If you are someone who would like to join and feel passionate about this topic and want to nerd out with us for a little bit, we'd love to have you message us, let us know kind of what your thoughts are, what you'd like to talk about. Right now it's pretty informal. We want to make sure it's valuable for everybody. But if you feel like this is a topic that you want to talk about, we'd love to chat and see where we can get together on this. So if that's you, chat or hit us up on DMs. If there's something in this that made you want to talk to either of us about leadership, entrepreneurship, I'm gone again. I'm not even going to fix it. Feel free to reach out for that too. And we'll absolutely have lots more cool stuff coming.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jordan, for the Friday chat. And we hope to
Absolutely.
see more of you next week.
Okay. Sounds good. See you, Jane. See you, everybody.